Okay, now I think I finally wanted to go live. Okay. Just let me know when I'm ready to start. Okay. Good evening, Anons. So, today I will be showing you how to start recording, editing, doing music, audio, being able to record your voice on something other than Audacity. So, we're going to move up in the world and we're going to get better. We're going to get good today. So, to start out, the program that I am using for this tutorial is Reaper. And it is a quote-unquote free software. It's similar to WinRAR, where it's like, please buy our software, but you don't actually have to pay for it. If you do end up using it, be good and pay for it. It's only $60, so it's pretty cheap comparatively. So even if you don't pay, everything still works. So if you don't have Reaper yet and you want to follow along, download Reaper. Doesn't take too long to install. But to start out, so what this software actually does is, again, a bit more than Audacity. So you can record audio, you can add effects, you can do music, MIDI. Like, this is kind of a whole shebang, a full, complete digital audio workstation, or DAW as they're called. So assuming some of you might be downloading it, I'll just kind of go through, like, the GUI of this for just a bit, and then kind of go over some settings that you would want to get set. So in the center here, this is where you have like all your audio tracks or your MIDI. I have some MIDI stuff here set up for later, so you can see like here's the MIDI, like here's a click track which is just a metronome. So this is where like all the audio and stuff is going to be. This is where you're going to do all your editing and everything, is in this portion right here. Similar to kind of like a video timeline. Over on this side right here, this is where you have your audio tracks, which are, connected to what's going on over here. These can also be anything, be a MIDI track or an audio track or whatever you want. Just some kind of basic functionality of these. You have your mute button. You have your solo button, which is essentially it only plays this track and mutes everything else, which is definitely handy to have. So 2 buttons, very important. Here you have an effects button where you can add effects, plugins, stuff like that, which we'll go over a bit later. Then you have your volume knob here, up and down volume, and record button. So that's kind of the basic stuff for this section. Up top here, there's some options, save, fades. I'm not going to go too much over this, in all honesty. That's more kind of for later. Just kind of be aware you got some stuff up here. And then finally down here, this portion, which, you can stretchy. This is also related to these tracks, as you can see. So this track here is this one here. This one here is this one here. You can double click on the blank space here or here and make more tracks. And then just delete if you don't want those. So this section is going to be more useful later on when you're doing like mixing and polishing a song. As you can see, here's the same volume fader, volume knob, because it moves up here, moves down here. Same thing. So turn your volume up and down, mute your track. And then you also have your pan knob. And what this will do, I'll actually demonstrate it here. This will, I hope this is actually stereo being streamed. Moves it all the way to the left, or moves your audio all the way to the right headphone. So important control, basic, kind of hard to find if you don't know where it is, so just be aware that's where that pan knob is. And yeah, so that is the kind of basic like layout that you need for a DAW, and like kind of getting started where everything's going to be for recording and all that. So now we are going to actually get a couple things set up in the preferences. At least what I personally like to use. You can change this later on if you don't like it yourself, but this is what I find easier. So first thing, we're going to go up to options here. We're going to go to preferences, which also control P, P. And then we are going to click on audio first. Never mind. We're going to go to the audio tab and click on devices. That's where it is. So this is an important window because this is where you're going to select your actual like microphone and what input you're using. Now I have a big setup with a lot of inputs and a lot of outputs. For yours, it's probably going to be something like direct sound and then your USB microphone or like integrated audio if that's what you're using. Which is fine. Like if you don't have anything better, you don't have anything better yet. But this is like if you're not hearing anything or if it's like selected to some weird like other thing that you're not trying to use. Like you're trying to use like a physical microphone and it's not a Blue Yeti. If you're using a different microphone, let's say, but it's trying to pick up your like your laptop microphone, this is where you change it. You shouldn't have to deal much with the input outputs. This is like if you have more than one thing that it's looking at for looking at what mic, or if it's like outputting something weird, you can change it here. I'm not going to go over sample rate, bit depth, and like your buffer block size too much in this, but basically bigger sample is good for if you want to like manipulate and stretch the audio more. It's just good to be aware that, although we're not going to talk much about sample rate because this isn't really an in-depth of what audio is and how digital audio works, which can be a different workshop. Just know that that important thing is right here and should say 48,000 or 44,100. And shouldn't have to really touch that. So from there, as long as you have the right microphone set, you can click OK. And then what I do before I start any project, even though there's some stuff here, before I start any project, I will go to File, Save Project As, go to whatever folder you want it to be in, and make sure that you name it, and then click on two things here. Create subdirectory for project, and move all media into project directory. So you want to have those two clicked. What this will do is take all the audio you record and the project file, your PP file, and put it into one like folder so that you don't have your audio or MIDI or all this stuff all over the place. And then you move it and it's like, oh, my audio's not here. All my progress is gone. So you always want to make sure you have that create subdirectory and move all media into project directory so that file organization, because that's very important, especially with audio. And I'm sure you know, anyone who's doing video projects knows that as well. You don't have all your stuff neatly organized, you're kind of screwed. And doing it this way will kind of automatically do that for you, so you don't really have to worry about it. So make sure you have that saved first. I do that before every project on Reaper just to like make sure everything's there. Next, we are going to set up a couple things here. So when you start on Reaper, it's probably going to do this thing where you see it kind of snap to these bars in the timeline. That's useful if you're working on music, but this one's going to be more focused on editing audio. So we want to change that. And what you do for that is Alt-S. I don't know what it is on a Mac. If you're using a Mac, stop. But it's also this button up here. So I want to make sure that snap is disabled so that you have a nice clean selection and it's not trying to edit to any kind of music grid. Another option I will select here is go to options and then, where is it? Automatically scroll view during playback. I make sure this is deselected so that when you're playing, it doesn't like move everything along with the timeline bar here, which is for me pretty annoying. If you like that, okay, but that's where that option is. So I usually make sure options, deselect, automatic scroll there. And then next setting, we're going to Control P or go to Options Preferences. And from here, we are going to go to Editing Behavior. And make sure that clear time selection when edit cursor moves on clock in arranged view. That's a mouthful, but just make sure that's clicked. It's essentially to have audio edited properly and it doesn't sound really weird when you do it. Otherwise, if you don't have that, it's like, what's going on? So it's kind of hard to describe. Don't particularly want to describe it at the moment, so just make sure that that is checked and your life will just be easier. Okay. So I believe those are basically the couple things. Oh, wait, no, I think there's one more I missed here. Options and this one. Trim content behind media items when editing. Make sure that is also selected. Auto crossfade. If that's not selected, you can select that as well. I'd personally do that initially just so that it creates fades. So make sure just these two options right here are selected. Okay, so at that point we got our preferences. We kind of talked about the basics here. I will go over one more thing actually, which is this portion, kind of in between the two. This is where you play, stop, pause, record button here, the big rep button to record. You have your time here. Then over on the side, like you have your BPM, which is your beats per minute. We'll go over that a little bit more. You don't need to focus too much stuff here, but if you're like wanting to do music and stuff, time signature, yada yada, that's where this is located. Okay, so getting started. Let's say you want to record your voice because you want to do some pony overdubs. So how you would start doing this, I'm going to shrink this and pretend like it doesn't exist, is just start by double clicking on this blank space and create a new track. You can also do it from up here as well, but this is a lot easier. So it's going to create a new track here for you. And it's like, okay, well, there's my track. Now I want to record my voice. So this is pretty easy. What you want to do is, it's a two-step process. First, well, I guess three-step. First, you click on the track that you want to record. And right now, I hear my voice, which is good because now I know this is working. So essentially how it works in DAW is that whatever record button, what's in here is called record arm, for whatever track, is what's going to get recorded. And you can do this with multiple, just two, so you can decide how many you want to record at once. Multi-track recording, as it's called. But we're not going to do multi-track here. That's if you have, like, let's say you had two. This one was your voice here, and then this one was your guitar here, and you want to record both at the same time. You could do that. But today we're just going to do one recording, kind of keep it simple. So once you hit this button, you also want to make sure you have the right input, because maybe you don't hear yourself. So you want to go here, this little right here, because, ooh, that disappears when you're not recording. I'm going to actually just turn this off. It was a little nifty feature. If you don't want to hear yourself, this, click that button right there so you don't actually hear yourself. So you have your input here. If you're using just one mic, this shouldn't be an issue. But if you are using an interface with multiple inputs, you want to make sure that, like, if this for some reason was on input 2, like, oh, that's not my voice, that's a guitar cable. So it's always good to make sure that, okay, like, if you're not hearing anything, double check to make sure your input is right here as well. Okay. So assuming everything is working, we have the input, we have it recorded armed, So now Reaper's saying, okay, it's going to record on this one track, but not on any of the others. And so how we start recording is, let's move this back to beginning. You can have it anywhere, in all honesty. You don't have to start at the beginning, but we're just going to have it at the beginning here. Once you're ready to record, you just hit the big record button right here and start recording. So we're going to assume this is some plebeian recording, and we're going to hit something end. I do not like mares. So, okay, we're going to edit that because that's not cool. And once you also hit done recording, it'll bring up this page, little thing here. This is basically just saving your audio. Just save all. I'm not entirely sure why they had that, but just save all whenever that pops up. Okay, so that's how we record in Reaper. So pretty easy. And you can punch in anywhere here. Save. Anywhere here. Stop. Save. Spacebar stops. So you can also do this on another track. It's like, oh, let me go down here and like, let's say, punch in anywhere here. You can hear that now. You want to record under this. It's like, okay, let me hit record again. Punch in anywhere. Save. And now, once you turn that record off, record again. Punch in anywhere. Now you have two tracks playing at the same time. And this is essentially overdubbing. So this is a lot easier to do with an actual DAW than Audacity once this gets started complicated. Because if you have a bunch of tracks and you're trying to layer a bunch of voices together like this, a lot easier. And, okay, so let's delete this and then delete this track for now. Okay, so we've shown how to record. Pretty easy, pretty standard. So let's say you want to, start actually editing the audio. So you play back. I do not like mares. We don't want that. So first, let's go over some kind of like general editing stuff. So when doing this, you can see there's like blank space at the beginning and at the end, which you don't want that. So there's a couple ways you can do the editing for this. You can either, if you move your cursor over the end of the clip or beginning of the clip, see those like two arrows there. If you go too far up, it turns into a fade, which we'll talk about in a sec. But otherwise, it's that little two arrow things. And what that allows you to do is move the clip around and cut off that extra silence. Now, this doesn't actually edit the audio itself, just what's being, played back within Reaper. So it's safe to do this. You're not going to actually delete any of your audio if you're like, oopsie. No, it's still there. It's just hiding. So we're going to take off that silence. And a general good rule of thumb is you'll listen. I do not like mares. And the more you do this, the better you're going to get at like picking out where stuff starts and stops. So like, okay, you want to make sure you don't cut off the mares. So like, you go to the end, you can see mares here. Well, that's the S. Mares. Good listen. Always listen. Remember, your ears are the ultimate thing. Like, sight is useful, but listening is the most important thing. Now, that's a little small, so I'm going to grab the track down here and enlarge it a little bit. And then I'm going to hit plus on my keyboard and zoom in. So now this is a lot easier to see. So this is going to be a lot easier to actually edit. So if we listen, I do not like mares. We can hear, okay, it stops about right here. You don't really hear anything. That's the end of this. So we don't really need anything from here on. So I'm just going to drag this over to about there. And that'll cut that off. And then finally, you want to go to the top here and just throw in a fade. You don't want it too long, not too short generally. Sometimes if you want like cut it off right at the end you want it short. You kind of have to feel out per like what you're doing, but I just got a bit of a fade. Not like mares. And then there we go. All that extra junk is gone. And same with this side too, because there's that at the end. I don't want that part in there. So I'm going to actually scoot this up a little bit. And then cut all that off. I do not like mares. So now that's nice and clean. There's no excess like I do bit at the beginning. Nice and tight. Because you can see right here, this is kind of right where I start speaking. Is where the waveform gets all bouncy. So depending how anal you want to be, you can get like right up to it, but you know, generally right around there is fine. And then whoop, add a fade. I don't want to go too far into this because then it starts getting to the actual word. So I'm just going to put it kind of right at the beginning there, so it doesn't actually interfere with anything. Now the reason why you add a fade in the first place to any of this is that, let's say you had to cut in the middle here for some reason. And we're going to zoom in here. So let's say you had to cut right here. This clip is going to start when it's like all the way up here, because this center line right here is basically no noise, no audio. And then the further up or further down you get, that's louder that the audio is going to be. So if you start right here in the middle of this, this is going to start right at the top. This is going to be a very sharp clicking sound. And you don't want that. So if I actually separate the clip here and click S to separate the clip out. Now, sometimes Reaper doesn't actually play this. We're going to see if this actually works. I do not. Nope, this is not working. I do. Okay, well, it's hard to hear, but sometimes when you cut things, there's a nasty click at the beginning. So, even though I'm not hearing it there because for whatever reason, I guess my voice is perfect. You always want to usually add a fade at the start and at the end just to avoid any of that click, which you might not hear initially. But the more you do this, the more you're going to hear that, and it's going to get really annoying. So I always say fades at the end and beginning just to remove that. So okay, so we got the clip like nice and contained. There's no noise at the beginning. There's no noise at the end. Now let's say we want to actually edit this audio. So we want to take this out. I do not like mares. We want to take out the not. Not like mares. So, okay, because we want to say I do like mares. So first thing I'm going to do is, here's a helpful little shortcut. Shift, and then up and down arrows. Well, this will not make it louder or quieter. This will just zoom in and out on the waveform, which can make it easier to edit. Now, for this one, okay, so we're going to listen back again. I do not like mares. So we have I do not like mares. So those where the start of the words are. So we're going to take out not. Now this one is going to be a little tricky. I might re-record this for easier if this isn't working, because even you can edit sometimes if the person, what they say, if it's slurred too much, there's only so much you can do to actually edit stuff until we get AI editing. But I do not like. So what I'm listening for here, do not, is the start of the n. Do not like mares. As you can hear there, do not, there's a bit of a not. Do not, because it's slurred a little. Do not like, so do not, I'm kind of limiting what I'm listening for. Do not like mares. Is more of just the not. Do not, and less of that ooh. Do not, because I don't want to cut off the do. Do not. So I'm selecting, just kind of getting closer and closer. Not like mares. Okay, so I hear here we have not like mares. Just not like mares. So I'm going to say this is like a starting point. I'm going to hit S on the keyboard and cut the clip into two pieces. And then we're going to listen again. Not like. Okay. Not like mares. And here's the like mares. Like mares. So this section right here, not like, is just the not. And you can also kind of tell because this is where I transition between the words, this dead space. So we're gonna S on the dead space, and I'll take this, just the not, and hit delete. And if we listen back, I do like mares. That's a little rough. But that's a general idea enough. It's like too hard. I do like mares. Let's say that. You're just going to want to drag it out a little bit and just kind of listen. I do like mares. And trying to... I do like mares. I do... Now you can hear the click there. I do click like mares. So that's a little annoying. So sometimes with editing, you have to just finagle with it and kind of get what sounds natural. This one, I don't know if I can. I might just re-record this and show like an easier one to do because you can't always do this perfectly. So I'm just going to add a fade here. Now I'm going to stretch it out a little bit to kind of simulate ending a word. Since we don't end our words on a sharp cutoff, there's like a natural like end to them, at least with English. So we're going to kind of simulate that by fading out the audio a little bit here. I do like mares. So, and then we're going to bring this one in. I do like mares. Now, this is where audio editing has its limitations because you can't always get the two takes to sound natural. I do like mares. And sometimes you have to finicky, move this a little bit. I do like mares. So, okay. That might be the best we can get with this. But let's say we record this with someone who's not just saying it all at once super fast. So let's re-record that. And then... I do not like mares. So that's a bit cleaner right here. This will be a bit easier to show how to do this. Start difficult, go easy. So we have I do not like mares. Actually, hold on. I'm going to separate those two to make this easier for you guys. I do not like mares. Okay. I do not like mares. Now we're just going to have a hypothetical where this word is a lot easier to take out. So now we have the I do not like mares. So here, as we saw before, in between the words, so we can cut here. And we usually want to cut at the start of the word here. And then we know this is the not, so we can delete that. And there's some excess bit here. You can see a little click here. Usually you don't want those, so we're just going to move that back over, move the clip back over, and then maybe throw on a fade, scoot this one back over. I do like mares. Okay, so now, and we're going to take this bit off. So now we're fixing this sentence to be something a lot more appropriate. Maybe scoot it a bit forward, sound more natural. I do like mares. Okay, there we go. So now we've taken out the not. And that's how you do audio editing for like voice or kind of whatever. You just kind of listen, see what you need, take it out. And sometimes you're going to have to play around with it to make it sound natural, play with the fade length, stuff like that. I do like mares. So that's how you're going to edit your audio. And then from there, let's say you had a different track as well, like for part 2. You can also move the audio down, move it up again, scoot it around, have them play back at the same time. I like mares. Which, of course, that doesn't sound good, but just as an example, we're going to put that back where it was. So big projects can have like audio all over the place, cut, edited, spliced, moved around. It's essentially the same principles, just expanded upon with various things. That's how I've always done my audio editing. And hopefully you get good files that aren't garbage sounding and have to do a lot of work on them. But okay, I don't know if anyone has any questions on this. I should probably actually open up the CY tube for this, because I got too much into the actual video itself. Okay, so I do like mirrors, yes. I do like mares. Proof. See? No one knows any different. No one is none the wiser. You can edit things, make people say things that they've never said before. Okay. Let's say your audio doesn't sound good. Let's say you sound kind of poo. I do like mare. Well, we can add plugins to these, which is going to be in your effects window. I'm just going to delete this and delete this. So from here, I have a lot of extra stuff in mine, but generally there are a couple categories. You have EQ, which is going to change like your highs, lows, stuff like that, like car radio EQ stuff. You have dynamics, which these are compressors or limiters, which essentially act as automatic volume knobs, which are really useful. And then you have other stuff like reverb, which is like, I think everyone knows what reverb and echo sounds like. Or distortion, which makes it sound very funny and crunchy. So there are a lot of different effects, but we're going to kind of focus on just kind of the main ones. EQ and compression and maybe some reverb, because that's mainly what people are going to be using to start. So for voice at least, this is going to kind of change per what you're doing. But generally what you want to do for your processing chain is you start with an EQ. And I am going to pick this one since that's what I listed for a download. So you usually do an EQ. And you're going to go to dynamics. And you're going to add a compressor. And then go back to your effects. Go back to EQ again. Add another EQ. And then at the end, if you want, you can add like reverb, other stuff like that. Let's just do this one. We're just going to turn that off for now. We're going to start with one of these at a time. So the reason why we do this is you start first with an EQ. And this is going to be what's called your cut EQ. Again, this is not a rule. This is just generally how it works. Sometimes you need to break the rules depending on what you're trying to do. But this is just a general good rule of thumb. So we're going to start with the cut EQ. So this is all we're going to do is take stuff out. So if we like, I do like mares, you can hear how it like, I do like mares. Takes out the lows, or I do like mares. Takes out the highs. Now for voice, what I generally do is I'm going to click on the back one here. 1. And these settings are usually all in every EQ. You just kind of have to find where it is per plugin. But for here, you right click to get the options. And I will start with a high pass filter. Now this is called the slope. This is basically just how sharply it cuts off bottom end. I don't want to go too much into all this, but for EQs, any EQ basically has 3 controls. The frequency, which is at what frequency it's happening at. The Q, which is basically the sharpness of it. And the gain, which is increasing or decreasing, like whatever frequency you're at. For just a basic high pass or low pass filter, there's no gain. There's essentially just your slope and frequency. So I'm going to start, like, do maybe 3, let's say. And I'm going to cut off, for the human voice, there's not much below, like, 80 hertz. So, like, 80, 50, 20, all that stuff below the really low-end bassy stuff. Ooh, I fell. None of that is basically needed. Generally, especially just for like basic voice stuff. Again, there are rules. If you want to make a really bassy voice for something, maybe not cut it out, but most of the time you want to cut out all that bottom end. That's what the high pass filter does. Basically everything from 80 hertz and below, it's going to cut all that stuff out. So we don't need any of that. I do like mares. Now you might not hear anything depending on your setup, because that really low end stuff, you need proper speakers. But I generally just set that there just to have it basic. Like, if we turn this really far up, I do we can hear how that's cutting out a lot of low end.
I do like mares.
Make it very tinny sounding, which can be a cool effect if you want that. But today we're just gonna scoot this over and cut out just
I do like
excess bottom end. And then as well, you can do any other cuts here, like let's say you're really nasally.
I do like mares.
At the top here for some reason. If there's too much nasal on the upper end, you can double click on that, cut that out.
I do like mares.
Which might soften up the voice a little bit.
I do like mares.
Now, it might be hard to hear what you're doing exactly, especially when you start out, so sometimes what I'll do is
I do like mares.
start out deep.
I do like mares.
Like, obviously way too much. And then just
I do like mares.
bring it up
I do like mares.
till it gets to a good level for what you need to cut out. Again, a lot of this is listening, and it takes practice to kind of really train your ear to hear some of these more subtle changes, but the more you practice this, the better you'll get. The more you know your own voice, the better you know exactly what to cut out with your mic. But for this, like, not too much I really need to do with mine.
I do like mares.
It's a good mic, so really not much EQ that needs to be done. But this is where we cut. You don't boost anything on this side.
I do like mares.
Because what we're going to go into next is the compressor. So, what a compressor does, there's a lot of knobs here that I'll kind of generally go over. But essentially what this thing is just,
I do like mares.
it just squashes down on the audio.
I do like mares.
So we can hear, oh, I got all quiet.
I do like mares.
Now, you might be wondering, oh, why not just use a volume knob and just turn yourself down?
I do like mares.
What's the difference? Well, with an EQ, with a compressor, what it does is it cuts off the peaks, essentially. So it takes all these and squishes them down. And the stuff below here might not get touched. So if you only want the loud, and this is often, you want the loud stuff turned down so that the whole thing sounds more even. Where if you just turn down the volume knob, everything will get quieter. It's still what's called the dynamic range. The loudest versus quietest part is still going to be potentially too loud. So with the compressor, you limit that down, limit the dynamic range, squish it, and it makes it just easier to listen to. You don't have to, like, turn the volume up and down on, like, the end user device, like, trying to constantly adjust where things are too loud or too quiet. This makes it nice and easy. People listen, they don't have to, like, do work themselves. You do it for them. Good editing is always said to be the editing that people don't notice, so that's why we do this. Now, for compressors, these are a bit more complicated than EQs, because EQs like, oh, I make the highs louder, I make the mids louder, I cut the lows out. Kind of easy peasy. You got some more controls. So, general, you don't get many more than this. This is basically as many as you'll get. Is your input. This will just,
I do like mares.
Makes it louder going into the compressor. Output.
I do like mares.
This makes it, whatever end signal after it gets squashed down gets louder. So this makes the original uncompressed signal louder here in the input. Output makes the actual compressed signal louder at the out. Which is generally you want this one a lot, because when you squash it down it gets quiet, so you want to turn it up again. Then you have your attack. What this does, this essentially tells the compressor how long to wait before you squash down on something. So if we have it like really short,
I do like mares.
Like squashes down
I do like mares.
super quick. But if we're doing this, let's say, make it wait like half a second before you actually start compressing anything.
I do like mares.
It's not turning on, because it's like,
I do like mares.
the attack is so far up, is waiting half a second before it actually crushes down on anything.
I do like mares.
So you can hear like,
I do like mares.
those transients, the initial like the start of the waveform
I do like mares. I
gets
do
squashed
like
down
mares.
a lot quicker when your attack is slower, versus if you turn it up,
I do like
the initial waveform is getting through. Which sometimes you want. Again, this takes practice to learn how to use this thing, but that's just what the attack control is. Release just tells it how long to hold the compression once it starts compressing. So you can go like
I do like mares.
really fast,
I do like mares.
or you can turn it up and like
I do like mares.
you can see there, it's really holding that.
I do like
It's really holding that compression to like keep the whole thing compressed longer versus
I do like
like
mares.
hitting it and then immediately turning off the compression.
Punching a
So generally, start maybe 100 for the release. Attack, I usually go maybe 30. Kind of have to play around with it, but those are good starting points. 30 milliseconds attack, 100 milliseconds release. RMS, we're going to leave that alone. Threshold, this is just telling where to start compressing. This is important.
I do like
We can
mares.
see, there's my voice right here.
I do like mares.
That's where the peaks are.
I do
The
like
compressor
mares.
starts here. The threshold's too high. This thing's not doing anything right now.
I do like mares. I do like
There's nothing happening. So you have to lower your threshold
I do
to
like
actually
mares.
get past the point where the peaks are in the audio.
I do
Boom,
like
right there. You saw some
mares.
gain reduction. We can turn it on lower
I do like mares.
to get even more, to get like lower that further down and compress even like quieter stuff. Go really far down,
I do like mares.
where it's like everything's just getting slammed and squished. So threshold,
I do like
this one you
mares.
really just have to listen for. Generally, you don't want it too low. Like here, that's going to sound bad, unless you want that sound. Up here,
I
it's
do
not going to do anything.
I do
So it's
like
generally
mares.
just for voice. You want like
I do like mares.
hit the peak to kind of even it out. And then finally, you have your ratio knob. This just tells the compressor for whatever decibel amount going in. So for every 1 dB, which is... it's a unit of measurement for sound. I'm not going to get too autistic about it. So for every 1 dB in, it's going to crush the output by 2 dB, 3, 6, 12, 20. So generally you want a 3 to 1 as a good start. So for every 1 dB in, it turns it down by 3.
I do like mares.
Adding is going to be kind of hard to hear this,
I do like mares. I do like mares.
but you can kind of hear that it's not as loud. The I is a little bit quieter
I do like mares.
versus...
I do like mares.
so you can hear the whole thing sounds a little more even. It's not as loud in some parts and quiet as others.
I do like
Hash bars are on again.
I do like mares.
Now, I would communicate with this a little bit more, but I don't want to get too autistic with the compressors, but that's generally how they work. Now, there is a really nice, easy compressor called the D1C3, I think? Yes, that's what it's called. Something like that. Once I find it, I can put a link in here. It's a compressor, basically input, output, and then a couple buttons. And this is easy mode compressor. And it will just like kind of automatically level everything. I cheat and I just put that on everything. There's no tools, just tools to use. You're not a tool. You whatever you have at your disposal. So I'll post that in the thread after this is done for the cheap and easy compressor. But I just want to show like all the controls and kind of how they work. In case like you wanted to get more fancy if you needed to like fine tune it or something. But there are other compressors out there where it's like couple knobs, compresses nice and easy. Done. You don't have to focus too much. And then lastly, for the general stuff, aside from reverb, is your boost EQ.
I do like
Now, the reason why the boost is after the compressor is because if you boost here, let's say,
I do.
the compressor is just going to squash that down.
I do like mares.
Versus like after it,
I do like mares. I do.
it's going to come through better. So generally you want to boost after the compressor so all your boosting doesn't get squashed down by the compressor. Because turning something up is turning up the volume of like part of the signal. And the compressor's going to see that. So generally boost after. So here you might want to like,
I do like mares.
maybe put a little smiley face depending on how bad your mic is.
I do like mares.
Kind of like just sweeten it up a little bit.
I do like mares.
So this is where you do the boost. This is the make it sound good section here.
I do like mares.
Well, that sounds kind of tinny.
I do like mares.
It's subtle, but you can hear it sounds a little more like hi-fi, you could say. And then finally, you have like other effects like reverb.
I do like mares.
If you want to add this,
I
on here.
do like mares.
A little nice and loud. But yeah, basically anything like reverb, all that stuff kind of comes after. Again, you can switch these around, but that's the general rule of thumb for doing all this. So that's processing 101. That felt like a lot of information. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but that's how to make your voice sound better with plugins type of deal. And there are a lot of different plugins out there. You can get a lot of different plugins. Basically, just search for free plugins on the internet, free VSTs. And you can get a lot of good stuff without paying any money, in all honesty. Like digital audio production is something that you don't have to spend a lot of money on unless you're orchestral. Then you spend a lot of money on it. A lot of money. Okay, so that's kind of voice editing, audio editing, stuff like that. So we are going to now move on to doing MIDI stuff and music for those who want to do that. So doing music in Reaper, I use a different DAW personally, so I don't know a ton about how to do that in this one, but I kind of know the basics of getting the setup. I have some stuff here to start. So what you want to do is you create a new track, and now there's two ways of doing this. If you have a MIDI controller, you click on the record. However, you don't have an input here. You go to MIDI and select whatever controller you have and just do all channels. And then now you can see instead of voice coming through, you have funny MIDI notes coming through. And that's how you get like a MIDI controller to work in Reaper. There are options to select it. I'm not going to go over that right now. We're just going to assume it works. So you can either do that, or you can select the track, go to Insert, New MIDI Item. It's going to create this blank little template here. And you can stretch this out. Now if you double click on this, it's going to bring up a thing that I forgot what the name of this is. Basically the piano roll. So from here, you have all your notes. And you can just click, drag, and start adding in MIDI. Really that simple. Like, I don't know how this is going to sound, but there you go. So you can add MIDI here. Down here is what's called your velocity. This will make the note louder or quieter, depending on what you want to do. So okay, you know, we did some MIDI here. Now we want to hear this, right? Oh, I don't hear anything. That's a shame. I'm trash. No. You go to your effects. And I posted in the thread a synth to download that's free. That's pretty decent to start with. Again, you can find more later. So I'm going to select that one in my giant list. Where is it? Here it is. Tyrone N6. So you just go to your effects, go to synth, and click on an instrument that you have. And now, oh, that's really loud. That probably hurts. I'm going to just turn that down a little bit. Okay, that didn't do like I thought it was going to do. But yes, now you have a synth. That is very high-pitched. I'm going to delete that. Need something a bit lower so it's not so harsh on the ears. But there we go. Now we have a synth here. Now if you're using a MIDI keyboard, you do the same process of recording audio. Select your track, hit record, and then save your MIDI. And there you go. You recorded all the MIDI notes. Now, you do the same process with drums. Like if you have a drum machine that uses notes to trigger, like kick, snare, whatever. Same process here. Let me show an example of that. Let me delete this. Go to the effects. I'm going to delete this one. And then add, where is it? This one costs money though, but there are free ones online. So if you're doing like a drum pad thing here, so I think using your MIDI notes on your keyboard to like trigger samples, and if we wanted to go in here, create a new MIDI item, and then scoot this down here. As you can see, the different notes correspond to like different pieces of the kit. So you can just throw stuff in there, yada yada, go ham, figure out your drum beat. So that's kind of the technical aspect of actually like adding notes into Reaper and doing that as well. As for music itself, just kind of music 101. So I'm going to create another, actually I'm going to use the old MIDI track I have up here for this one. So music is split up into bars, beats, stuff like that. So here, as you can see, there are lines which show the different bars, and generally your time signature, which is generally 4/4, which is going to tell you that okay, there's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Each of those 4 beats is contained within these bars here, within the DAW. And like if we play this back here, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's how, if anyone who's had any like previous experience, your bars are kind of located within there. 4/4 is natural to us. That's just what we hear. We always hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do other stuff, but that's just what we hear. So I always usually will compose within like that 1, 2, 3, 4 set of the bars. You can see like 1, we split this up, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that might be like a kick pattern, you could say. Well, that doesn't sound too nice, but sometimes that's also to play with the notes when adding stuff on here. But what's the first note of this? What is that note? Oh, that's an A. Let's just see. Oftentimes the first note is the start, like that's the good sounding note of the key, is what it's called. So yeah, 4/4, and you just kind of add stuff in here. You can also copy and paste as well. Not entirely sure how to do that within the Reaper thing here, because again I use a different DAW, but if you want to do funny beats, you can just copy and paste things over and over again. And hit play. And then let's say, oh, I wanted to add some drums to this. Then you go here. And I am going to just do it this way, and oopsie. Delete that, delete that. Okay, it doesn't want to delete that. Fine, whatever. So I'm going to turn... Now this is a metronome track, so we're just turn this off for a minute. You can create this by going to... Where is that? Insert click source. If you click on that, you'll get this, and then you can copy paste it. Now what this is just this is your metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is your play along track. You turn down the synth. You can hear that's following along with that. So that's always nice to do, so that you actually know like within the song what you're doing, that you're not like off a little bit, and then it's like you try to do this, and if this is your drum track, it's like, oh, that sounds really weird. So playing along to a click track, if that's what you're doing, always nice to do. So we're gonna assume that like I'm doing that. So let's do this. I'll start a little bit like before if I'm recording MIDI to have some counting. And then I hit record. 3, 4. So that's generally good practice to do for like, if you're going to record with like a keyboard, get some time in, listen to the click track, and then get good at actually like playing the keyboard. Now I noticed mine, this is a weird thing. I haven't figured out why mine does this. It might be a latency issue, it might be a hardware issue, but like sometimes the MIDI notes will record not at the spot where you hit them. So you can just drag and then line up those notes to the bars within the beat, and then they'll sound a little bit better. Or if you play and you don't do a very good job at playing, you can just double click on the MIDI track and go in here and whoop, 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 and just snap it to the grid. Oh well, but all professionals do, unless you're an acoustic person. Then this is haram. There is something called quantize, which is, I don't know where that is in here. Oh, it's right there. What that does is basically just takes all the notes and automatically snaps them to the closest grid section, so you don't actually have to do that by hand, but if you want to do it lazy way, you can just quantize after you play. And then, now, I'm going to make this. Now everything's nice and neat right on the grid there, so... And then more or less you just repeat that over and over again with all the different parts of the song. Kick, snare, bass, synth. You add your effects if you want to change it to a different thing. Yada yada yada. And then boom, there you go. That's like how to make music 101. And then you can also add like recorded audio down here. So if you wanted to sing over it, you could have like this playing at the same time. So like let's say I just move all this out of the way, scoot this over here. I do like mares. So you can make the next hit track. Boom, there you go. So have recorded audio and MIDI and all your stuff playing at once. So for the final, I think kind of piece thing for here today is when you're done with this, what I will do just for safety is I will select the part I want, and it's like, okay, I want to render this. So you take that, you go to render, have your time selection. This is important, so it actually only renders this bit, not other stuff out here. Because if there's like a little piece of audio out here and you have the whole selection, it's gonna go take everything to the last bit of audio, even if this is dead silent. Time selection, place it where you want to place it, name the file. Okay, so if you want to just show people like demos, MP3 is fine. I will usually go maximum quality, 32. Unless like you're really compressed on size, and you can go to 192, so 320. And then you render that. Now, if you want to actually publish something, like you want this to be the final mix, like this is the whole thing, output as a wave file, 24-bit wave. I mean, you could do 16, but I usually be safe at 24. And the difference between those is that a wave is going to have all the information in there. You could do a FLAC as well. FLAC also has all the information. It's called lossless compression. So FLAC and wave won't lose anything, but they're going to be bigger files. FLAC is going to be like a wave, but a bit smaller. And with MP3 or any other lossy compression, as they're called, it's going to cut out information. So it's going to be technically not the full thing. It just does an intelligent way of removing like usually high end from like certain like bits and like spaces. So wave does sound better. That's usually what you want to do for the final thing, MP3, if you just want to kind of show it. So, and then render. And that's more or less kind of like general recording 101. I don't think there's really... Oh, I guess the only thing I could also say is, like, if you are, like, just a quick tip, if you are recording, you don't want to have it like, see how that like turned red there? That means that you're peaking, you're distorting. Normally you don't want that, so if you are recording, make sure that it's all nice and contained within the actual like bar. It doesn't hit like what's called dBFS, 0 dBFS up there. So I guess that's the last thing for recording that I forgot to talk about earlier, is just make sure it's not clipping so you don't get ugly distorted audio, which is achieved either through gain on the mic or just backing away from it so you're not as close, because the closer you get, the quicker it distorts. Yes, the audio files are laid out very sus, but this is just for demonstration purposes of like showing how to add it. When it actually comes to doing this yourself, please make it neater. Organize your files, rename them properly, move them where they need to be, and just keep things organized, which I didn't want to go too in-depth with this, so yeah, there we go. I don't know if anyone really has any questions, but that's kind of like a basic hour tutorial of how to start recording and doing music, and go fun, go ham. Experiment and just play around with it. Yeah, like, I will still use Audacity myself for if I'm really lazy and I just want to hit record on something quickly and then save it, but like editing on Audacity, doing anything else in Audacity is just like, it's a pain in the dick. Once you actually learn how to do it like a proper DAW, you never want to go back. It's so much easier. So I started out on Pro Tools, which back then was it was expensive, but you can afford it. Nowadays, the company that owns it, Avid, sucks fat dick. And it's like, for Pro Tools, it's a $300 a year program for like the music version of it, which is pretty much all of Pro Tools. It just doesn't have advanced video stuff or post-production, but it's like, I would like to recommend Pro Tools to people because it is like, it's a really good DAW, but at $300 a year for like people just starting out, it's like, I can't recommend that. It's either use Reaper or Torrent FL Studio. It's like one of the two. But yeah, like, so when recording in FL Studio usually sucks dick. Like, Reaper's a good DAW for kind of all around like recording audio, doing MIDI. Like if you want to make like trap beats, them hippity hoppity music and stuff like that. Like if you're doing just MIDI, FL Studio is usually really good for that. They have different MIDI features that other DAWs don't have that make it easier to do stuff like that. Pro Tools is more like, if you're going to just do audio editing and you're serious about editing audio and like recording music and like doing it that way, Pro Tools is still, I think, the top one for that. Like it's that's what it was built for, audio editing. MIDI, it can do it, but it's just not quite as like comprehensive as some other DAWs. So it's kind of like what you need for a different purpose type of thing, but Reaper's a good all-around one that's technically, it's technically free, but if you want to pay for it, you can. Yeah, MuseScore is more like just if you want to arrange some sheet music and then have someone else do it for you. So, like Horse Sex Haver was saying, FL Studio for like recording audio, it's kind of balls. Like you can do it, but it's not the best. Like it wasn't built to record audio in mind, if that makes sense. FL Studio is more built for like making MIDI based tracks. So like you can add audio in there, but it's really its main focus is on like making beats, composing within like MIDI. That's where its like strong suit is. Where Reaper is, it can do, as you can see, it can do MIDI, but it doesn't have as many features with MIDI. And like the audio editing within Reaper is going to be more comprehensive. It's going to be a bit easier to do. So yeah. Uh, it is kind of hard to go. That's actually kind of a tricky question because, like, it's kind of the situation where it's like, if you know what you're looking for, you know what you're looking for type of deal. But generally, any, like, site that has, oh, here's a list of best free VSTs, best, like, EQ, free EQs, best free compressors. Kind of hard to go wrong with those. Like, if you're looking for really obscure stuff, it might not be what you need, but any, like, general, like, search website with free VST type of stuff is probably going to do you well. I can also collect a list of stuff and post it in the thread of, like, good free stuff for, that I know, at least for myself, works well. Like, the one I put in here, the melded production stuff that I was using on here. Not this one, but, like, this stuff here, like, it's all free. This stuff is free, and there's, like, it's pretty comprehensive. It works well. Like, the EQ even has, like, saturation knobs on it. You can even change, like, the harmonics of the EQ as well, which I don't see this in a lot, which is basically kind of like, kind of simulate analog EQs, which have a certain magic to them, because not all EQs sound the same. Not like every EQ, when you turn it up to like this, is going to have, like, you know, a perfect bell curve. There's going to be some, like, harmonic distortion, as it calls, little peaks, boosts here and there, which can make it sound a lot better or a lot worse, just depending on what you do. So different plugins have different functions. It's just kind of, yeah, just search online for best free EQs, press best free compressors, and that'll do you good. Yeah. Yeah, so that's actually a good thing. A lot of people mix up in the first place what mixing and mastering is, which you kind of reminded me there, because I have people who say, like, oh, can you help me master this track? Like, what do you mean? Oh, put it together. So mixing, yeah. So just to clear up those two terms, mixing a track is what this is, where you're adding plugins to the individual tracks and you're moving stuff around and you're adjusting the volume knobs and you're adjusting the pans. So mixing is just all the individual tracks getting all to sound nice together. Mastering is going to be, once you have all this stuff done, traditionally what you do is, like, if you have an album, you take all your songs, all rendered out into 2-track, you know, just normal WAV files, and then you just do processing on just the whole song itself. That's what mastering is. Mastering is getting all the songs within a collection to sound nice together, to have the same kind of, like, even spread of frequencies, that there's not one that's too bassy compared to the other, not too bright, not too loud compared to the other. They have a nice overall, like, consistency volume-wise, making sure that the track is loud enough. That's one big thing you do in the mastering section, is that you have what's called, like, a limiter. Do I have one on here? Yeah, like this one, where, which how this works, like, set the ceiling and then volume. The Make It Louder plugin. So that's another thing you do in mastering, is you turn it up as loud as you need it to go. You don't usually do that during the mixing section, since you want some headroom, which is just quiet at the top so that you have something to work with, but... did I answer the question? I kind of went on a tangent there. I can't remember exactly what you asked. Oh, yeah. So, like, it's... Again, that's kind of the same, like... Yeah, finishing touches is generally the same process of, like we did with the vocal processing chain. Cut EQ. Compression, which sometimes, like, I had a professor who would do, like, 3 separate compressors. One for, like, overall compression, one for taking the peaks, and one for, like, overall again. So sometimes mastering can have a lot done on it. So you might have, like, a cut EQ, 3 different compressors to, like, get different parts of the song to, like, squish down nicely. And then, like, a boost EQ at the end to, like, pump up the frequencies you need. Another thing that's common that usually you don't put reverb. Sometimes you can put a separate reverb track, but that's something I don't do typically. From this one, you also can add, like, plugins that are, you know, quote-unquote sweeteners, like the fat sausage fattener. For those who know what that is, funny plugin. We just kind of make it sound gooderizer plugins. Usually we'll put on the master at the very end. So kind of the same chain, just what you're doing in mind of, instead of like, oh, here's just the kick, I want to focus on kick frequencies, is like, okay, I need to compress an EQ, maybe add stereo widening for like the entire track itself. And that's kind of what you're listening for, and it's a lot more subtle. Like, within the mix, you can turn things up and down a lot more aggressively, or hit the compressor a lot more aggressively. Where in mastering, it's like, okay, you might want just like 1 or 2 dB a boost, 1 or 2 dB a cut, because when you're doing it on the whole song, it makes a pretty dramatic difference. So mastering is kind of the same thing, just a lot more subtle and deliberate in what you're doing, so that you don't over process the song and make it sound bad, which I've heard like mastering engineers do that on some work that I've done with like people back in scores. Like, they did too much, they were too hard on like the EQ, and it sounded like super bright and just painful to the ears because they just went too hard on the mastering section. They weren't going soft enough on things. So that's a general tip of like mastering stuff. Is kind of broad, go kind of easy on it, but remember you're doing it for an entire track and not just one piece of the audio. Oh yeah, the sound gooderizer. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Like, the stock EQ of your DAW is like not a bad EQ at all. Like, I will still use the Pro Tools default EQ like a lot. Like, just because it's the default EQ in your DAW or the default compressor doesn't make it a bad EQ or the compressor. Like, if you know how to use the tool, you know how to use the tool. It's just other stuff can make it a little bit easier to do what you're trying to do. So I don't know if anyone else has any questions. Oh yeah, Serum's a good bass synth. Or just synth in general. I don't have it, but like, I've been thinking of getting that one. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Doesn't look like there's anything else that people are asking. Okay, awesome. Welcome. If you need me for anything else, for like any other stuff that go more in depth on, I'll be happy to come back for that. Or join with anyone else if anyone else has anything too, because I don't know everything, so sometimes I might bring like a co-host or something for like detailed stuff. Specialty things. I would look, there's one more question. Any tips on how to record an instrument RL? I'm not sure what you real life? Like recording like instruments in person, real life stuff? I think that's what Doug Goblin is asking. Assuming that is what you're saying, I could honestly, that's an entire separate video of like recording like actual real instruments. But the TLDR of that is point mic at sound source, turn up gain so it doesn't distort, and hit record. That's the really short version, but I can do an entire separate video of like how to record all sorts of instruments in real life and like things you need to think about and like take in consideration mic choices, the blah blah blah. So yeah, I can just do a different like session on that one. Yeah. I know FL has its own built-in like vocal splicer plugin that's really nice. I have a roommate who uses FL, and I can ask him to show that. I'm sure that's something I've been wanting to do myself, is look for a free plugin that does that. But yeah, they're essentially tools that can cut the vocals, put it on a keyboard map with the notes, and then you can just play the different voice parts. So it's essentially just a plugin that either your DAW has or you go find one. I can actually go look for one of those myself and post a link to it eventually. But yeah, vocal splicing is either that or you can do it manually. There's a couple ways, but that's generally it. Oh yeah, you might have to pay for it depending on how good it is. Some plugins you do have to pay for. Some of them are just that do specific things and they just want money for it if you can't find it. And some of these are more obscure, it's hard to find a torrent for them. So if you get too far into this, you are eventually going to be spending money, and then your plugin library increases to a gargantuan size and you wonder what happened. Kind of a bit of both. Like, you can get away with a lot of stuff just being free. Like, there's a lot of really good free stuff, but like, for example, synths. Certain synths are better at making certain sounds. That's a bit of a hot take, but like, most of them, I can also go over synths eventually, like what this stuff does. But sometimes it is like, you do want to like, there's a synth that can just do a certain thing really well, and it's worth the money to like pay for the thing that's going to do that really well and save yourself a headache and trying to do it like either manually or dig through a bunch of different options to get to it. So like for me, I use the complete bundle a lot for myself, which is stuff like, not that, but not Reaper. Let's see. It's stuff like Contact, Battery, Absinthe. Let me see, where are all those? Like stuff like, yeah, like Battery. Massive is another really popular one. Now, you could do everything with like a 3 oscillator synth if you like really hate yourself, but I would not recommend that. But like paid for synth, actually, where the heck is Massive on this? Not Massive X. Oh, let's just use Absinthe. Like, this is one that you pay for, and like, this has a lot more options for stuff you can do. So some of these paid for synths, you just get more stuff from them, like flat out, and it's not cock and ball torture trying to do everything for free. I like having to route audio clips and like, yeah, so some of that, it is just worth it just to buy it. Like, if you get into this, you're going to be like, man, I wish there was an easier way to do this. Oh, I could get a plugin that does this, but it costs money. Okay. So eventually you are going to end up buying stuff just because it's a lot easier. Yeah, download managers kind of suck. But that's how some of them want to do it. Oh, it also sucks when they try and make you, like, when you need an iLock for some of these things, which is like a separate dongle you have to purchase that's like $50 to store your, like, licenses on. I think they allow a cloud option now, but at least before you had to have this, like, separate hardware dongle for some audio plugins, and you had to have it on that dongle, and if it broke, you're out of luck. So, fortunately, not a lot use that, but there's a variety of ways. Download managers do kind of suck. But if you really like the plugin, yeah, so you just have to bite the bullet. It is really iCook. I hate iLock. Okay, honestly, it's a bit more useful now because you can put it on the cloud instead, where before you're limited to just the dongle, so... Now it actually is a bit more utility instead of just forcing you, but when they force you to do it, it's really, really annoying. Fortunately, Complete doesn't do that. In fact, I've been able to put this on so many different computers that are past, like, the limited amount of licenses, so... I don't know what's going on there, but... I like that Native Instruments does that. I don't have to deal with any iLock, I just download it to the computer, put in the code, and then boom, you just install whatever you want. It is expensive, though. It's like $1,000 or whatever. So, that's if you really are like, man, I really like doing this. I had to dump some money into getting a whole bunch of stuff. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If no one has any other questions. Unless there's a... Complete is weird to crack. Like, some of these plugins are really, really difficult to actually, like, get a cracked version of. Versus, like, FL Studio, where it's, like, super easy. So, just depending on how hard you want to go. You can find torrents of a lot of things. That is one thing. I don't know how easy it is to find torrents of, like, sample library plugins where it's like 10 gigabytes for, like, high quality, like, violin samples and stuff. I haven't really looked into, like, how easy it is to torrent that stuff versus just having to pay for it. I could get one guy I know who does orchestral Frozen Rain. Potentially maybe even Radiarch, if you've heard of them. And, like, because they know more about, like, in-depth orchestral stuff than I do, for, like, people who want to, like, make real sounding stuff within the DAW where you don't have the money to, like, pay people to go play it for you. How to play sick jazz solo. What you do, you just bang on the instrument for like 2 weeks until it sounds good and then feel it. And if you make a mistake, play it 3 times again so people think it was real. Yeah, free sample packs do get sometimes free download sales. You can do a lot free between torrenting, sales, and, like, looking out for deals. It just kind of depends on what avenue you go into, where sometimes it's really hard to find a torrent or really hard to find a sale on things, so it just kind of depends on what you want. But you can get decently far from torrents and looking for free stuff. Especially for a beginner, I really wouldn't recommend for, like, buying a lot of stuff until you, like, know what you want to buy if you're going to buy something. So then you don't waste, like, $200 on a, like, plugin that you turned out like, I don't even use this. I don't really need it. Then it's kind of like, well, that was a waste of money. So I usually will stick to free until you kind of know what you're looking out for. If you have someone like you who knows what you're looking for themselves and can redirect you to that. So generally kind of stick to free at the beginning. Just look online for all that stuff. You can do a lot for free, in all honesty. What plugins are used to make Daniel Ingram soundtracks? Uh, you can get a lot for free, like the processing EQ compressors and stuff. You don't really need to pay for any of that. I think Daniel Ingram, because he works with Hasbro, will have session musicians come in and like an arranger to like orchestrate his stuff and then they play it live. So getting good real live sounding instruments through samples, that's again, I might want to bring someone on else for that, to like who knows a lot more of like the good samples and what to use, and like if there are any like good torrenting ones, because that can be tricky to find really good samples for free. At least in my experience, generally, if you want like Daniel Ingram sounding stuff, where you want realistic sounding violins and trumpets and that, you can get decently far with free stuff. But depending on how autistic you want to be, like, you might need to get some samples. But that's kind of the key thing, is whether they're free or paid for. Usually you're going to want to find some good sample libraries for acoustic instruments. And then kind of study, like, Disney stuff, too. Because he uses a lot of, like... I noticed... Again, there's probably someone who studied his stuff more than I have, but... He uses a lot of kind of, like, Disney-esque kind of, like, arranging. But, yeah, basically just you need sample libraries and just general free processing plugins and a knowledge of how to make music in the first place. It's kind of less plugins and more of like knowing what he's doing for composing. Oh, he did? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he uses Contact. There is a free Contact player, but I think Contact itself actually does have a torrent. I'm pretty sure I've seen it. Like, essentially what Contact is a really powerful sampler, in short. And people make sample libraries within Contact itself. Like, you have script capabilities within Contact, like, it can go pretty in-depth. So that's the kind of de facto thing you use for, like, simulating, playing string samples, drum samples, trumpet samples, brass instruments, stuff like that. So it's kind of like the ultimate sampler is Contact, if you wanted to get that. I would recommend it. So if you can find a torrent, that'd be good. If not, then I would just, like, again, get the complete bundle if you have the money for it, or try and find a torrent. I use Contact myself a lot for most anything sample related. It's really nice. Although that can eat up your computer resources. Like, so depending also on what plugin you get for it, and like what Contact instruments. Like, you might end up needing a lot of RAM, like a decently powerful CPU. If you get really into orchestral stuff, you're going to need a lot of hard drives to store all the samples. I wouldn't worry about that too much at first, but especially with like your computer resources, RAM, CPU, stuff like that. Once you get really in-depth into this and you start having like 100 tracks on a song because you're just going ham on it, like you're seeing the universe in a whole new light, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, my laptop isn't cutting this anymore. It's just not powerful enough. So certain things on Contact, and especially that one, can really eat up like system resources. A chord duo, they'll be you can do that's fine. That'll it may catch on fire depending on what you're doing, but you can at least start with it. I know one guy who had like a 12 core. He'd used an Epic processor, I think, for like, I think it was Radiarc. Like he had a nuts CPU because like his orchestral stuff was so. You usually do not need like a 12-core CPU, but like I know he used a massive big voice system just because of the amount of samples and processing he had to do to make his stuff sound real. It was nuts. But general, like, if you want to make like the beats, the funny trap music, hippity hop stuff, like you can get away with honestly a fairly simple computer for that kind of thing. And there's just kind of be picky and choosy because different plugins use different amount of processing depending on what they're simulating or if it's just basic EQ, basic compression. So that also would determine exactly what tools you're using for what kind of project, with how much system resources are going to get eaten up by that. Same with it's kind of like the same thing with video editing. Oh, 12 voices, that's so many. Yeah, some of these really, really eat up processing power. It's nuts. Honestly, maybe you can run Crisis. Like if you're doing extreme audio stuff, you know, that's the ultimate test. If it runs Crisis, then you can work on a DAW. That's actually one thing. You don't really need a GPU for audio. So if you're just not a gamer, you hate gamers, then you can skip on the GPU. I haven't heard of Melky Tracker personally. So it's like a... Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, like you said, 8-bit chiptune type of stuff. I have not toyed around with like dedicated chiptune creators like that. I do know a guy who's on the board who does like he has a Game Boy that was modified to be a chiptune like tracker and like make that type of stuff with that. So I could talk with him and see if he can get on to like talk more about specifics of using those like programs. I don't know if you didn't want to use them, you could just use saw, sine, square wave, pulse, noise. Like, the thing about chiptune is that they are, of course, very limited on what they could use back in the day because they didn't have the power. So you can simulate chiptune stuff in a DAW by just using like basic. Actually, like, hold on here. Reaper has a synth. They're a very basic synth. Like, honestly, would be a decent one for that. Oops, let me change this here. Because this one has like... Is that not the one that I wanted? Ah, whatever it is. But basically Reaper has a built-in synth that's like just saw, square, sine, ADSR, stuff like that. So, oh, it is set to mono. Oh, well, but, yeah. I can bring someone on, I think, who knows more about, like, the chiptune stuff specifically and how to use, like, chiptune sequencers and stuff. I mean, I could figure it out myself, but it'd also be nice to get other Anons on the board to help out. Yeah, it's... Using stuff like chiptune trackers is kind of, like, masochistic. Like, it can be really annoying to use. That's fun. Yes. Okay, so like I'm sure you've heard like Rot talk about the Blue Yeti meme on her streams a lot. And like so the reason why I gave the Blue Yeti such flack was like back in the day she would have her mic on and I could hear dogs barking from like way down the street coming through her mic. And like and then I remember also like when Wootmaster used to, not be a bit of a dick. Like his Blue Yeti that he would use, even on the lowest gain setting, his voice would just distort like crazy. So like, I got really irritated with Blue Yetis and just how they don't sound bad as a microphone. It's just that the functionality of the USB one makes it really annoying for some things. So like, I just get mad at people who use Blue Yetis because they'd just be so sensitive and like the game would be distorting. So then I just tried to say like, oh, I hate Blue Yetis, and then it turned into a meme that some guy hates Blue Yetis. But I mean, Blue microphones as a brand, like they make really good stuff. Which mic to use? That is a long and complicated question. So it depends on what you're recording and what you want the mic to sound like. For voice, just assuming you're on a cheap budget, because most people I talk to are like, I only have $100 to spend. I'm broke. How do I record? I will usually recommend something like the Audio Technica AT2020, I think it's called. Let me verify that's what it is. Yes. Audio Technica AB2020 USB. Let me just get a link to that, in all honesty. It's like something like... Hold on a sec here. Something like that. This one I have good experiences with. I would, yeah, if you could afford it, I'd get an XLR-based mic where the output isn't USB, but if you don't have the money, something like this, just a condenser USB mic for your voice, is a good thing to start with. Not too cheap, so it doesn't break or sound bad, but something just decent enough quality. Again, I can do a whole separate stream on just like microphones, starting out microphones, what microphones to use, recording on that, so I can come back eventually and like go like ham in depth on microphones and everything about that section of things. Oh, what I'm using right now? I am using... What is this thing? This is a Sennheiser MKE 6000, I think. MKA 600. So this is a shotgun microphone, is what this one is. So with shotguns, they look like very skinny long dildos. So up front, you can hear them really well. But as you move to the side and around the mic, the audio drops off pretty dramatically. So they're hyper-directional is what they're called. I personally really like this one for what I do. So what I have, this is something I can show on next stream because I'm not really set up to do this. I have a closet in my space that I basically outfitted to record. Where in my room here, like you can probably hear it's a little reverberary, like. But in my closet, I put like a carpet down. I put like foam pads on the walls. I have like a separate monitor and microphone in there that's running out to my computer with like a keyboard, so I can do all my stuff in the closet right there by myself. Headphones that run out to my like audio interface so I can still listen back in there and I don't need anyone else. Yes. Shotguns are used in video production a lot. Typically for... They're also used for video production and, like, sound design. Like, what's called Foley work. Which is what people who make sound effects do, where they just get a bunch of junk and bang on it and smash it, and then, shotguns are typically used for that, I think because they're a lot more isolated. So you're getting, like, the direct sound of, like, the sound effect that what you want and not, like, excess background noise, because especially with those, you want, like, a nice, clean recording. But yeah, typically they're used a lot on film crews. Is where they're most predominantly found in. But, yes, for, like, sound foam padding and stuff, I have a closet that I use that for that I can, get set up for next stream and show kind of how that's set up. And also, like, talk about acoustics and all that, like, how to make your room acoustically, like, better. And cheap ways to do it. Video tutorials. Because to do that, you will need to... Acoustically treating your room will cost a little bit of money. I would recommend building it yourself, because, like, buying panels can get really costly, especially bass traps. So, but you can, like, some basic woodwork and rock wool, just stuff it in the corner. It'll help, like, even out the acoustics in your room, which are good for mixing, because, like, if your room's too reverberant or too bassy... Because every room resonates at a certain frequency, and you can actually figure this out by, like, playing a, tone generator and have it swoop through the frequencies. And you can either get software that analyzes this, or you can just listen. It'll go, woo! Like, there'll be peaks that just boost up really loud all of a sudden. And that's the frequency at which your room is resonating in. And, like, having those weird resonances, if you're trying to mix on speakers, which is usually better, mixing on speakers will give typically a clearer mix than on headphones only. That can mess up, like, your bass response that you think you're hearing, because there's a sudden peaks all over the place in your room, and you mix to compensate for that, and then you play it somewhere else, and all of a sudden your mix sounds weird because you're, like, EQing to your room while you're mixing your song, and it just... Acoustically treating your room or just getting into a good shape is something that's highly recommended, even if it costs a little bit of money. Oh, that sucks, living in a neighborhood with a bunch of dogs barking. There are some things you can do, but, like, yes, if you're just in a crappy space, you kind of have to, like, play to the environment. There are noise reduction plugins you can get. I don't know if anyone knows of any free ones. Because the ones I bought back in school, the isotope ones, work really well. Amazing for, like, noise, like, reduction and all that. And, I can go over those eventually, too. I'd come back and do more, like, advanced, like, in-depth tutorial of how to fix audio with, like, really bad, crappy stuff. Like, if I do it for the board, and people submit, like, noisy garbage Vocaroo recordings, and I'm just like, help. Actually, no, that's a potential idea. Like, if we do an MLP Sings again, I can, like, stream the process of me fixing everyone's audio, not just removing the noise and editing it, but, like, doing vocal tuning, stretching the audio so they actually sound, like, somewhat cohesive within the song and it's not a complete mess. Because that's generally what I'll do with, like... I try to keep, you know, the characteristic of an Anons singing, but, like, if everyone's completely out of time, everyone's completely out of tune, it's like, okay, I need to edit some stuff around so it's at least, like, generally people singing at the same time. So that's something else I could potentially do. I just don't have a bunch of random Anon voices at the moment. Don't know if anyone else has any other questions. A non-tune. Yes, it's a non-tune, is what it is. Oh, if you get enough voices, you actually don't really need to auto-tune everyone. Like, the general mass of people singing often evens itself out, so you don't actually have to really tune. I've only really needed to do it on people who are, like, wildly out of tune. That just completely sing it totally differently. I don't know how they botch it so much. But anyone can join, so it's... Yeah, I do the 300 years for Pro Tools because I started on that, and all my stuff is on Pro Tools. So it's kind of like... I fought Avid for a while to keep that down, but they changed their pricing program. So it's like, okay, I might be able to get it down again this year, but probably not. So, for what I do, and the fact that everything has been on Pro Tools for me in the past, it's like, well... I know this DAW, I know what I need it for, it does what I need it for what I need it to do. So I'm just like, I'm just gonna bite the bullet, pay the price. The fact that they added like ambisonics and like 3D audio to Pro Tools now is like, okay. Now I feel a little more worth it, because like, I really wanted to like work on like 3D audio stuff and have the option to do that. Which not a lot of programs have built into it. So that's kind of like future stuff that I wanted to learn how to do. Since I haven't had really much opportunity to work on 3D audio and like ambisonic stuff. But yeah, like I would not recommend anyone get Pro Tools unless like you really know you want to use Pro Tools. But I would just suggest get like Ableton or Reaper or like FL Studio in all honesty. Like, don't even bother looking at Pro Tools unless you really know what you're doing. Stick free, stick cheap. Don't get trapped like I was. I wish I could recommend Pro Tools, I really do, but the company that runs them are a bunch of Jews. It saddens me so much. How can I tune out this cricket that sits outside my battle station window? Well, you can either kill it, eat it, or... Isotope does have noise removal software that if you can get just a recording of the cricket and the background noise, you can actually use that to take that out of the audio but leave your voice alone. Now that's like post-processing, so that's not like live, so if you're trying to like stream and do that, that's not going to work. There is some software that I think does do that, but I don't know any off the top of my head. That's like pre-recorded stuff where you use that software and take out the cricket. So you can do it, you just have the right software to do it. And have a nice clean sample of like cricket and background noise for it to listen to and work off of. Okay, actually, that's not too bad. That should be fairly easy to remove. Because if you listen to that, that's pretty consistent sounding cricket background noise. There's not a lot of individual hard cricket noise. It's kind of one blend. And blended background noise like that is a lot easier to clean up. How would I clean up audio for making pony vocal chops? For that... Oh, what was the site? There is a site somewhere that has basically the surround sound mixes from the show, and they take just the center channel. Because when you mix surround, it's usually music and sound effects and stuff on the sides and backs and whatever. But the dialogue and some sound effects are usually in just the center channel of a 5.1 setup. So if you take just that center channel and post that, you get pretty much clean dialogue with maybe some background effects in it. Yay Ponies, I think, has 5.1 vocal extractions. I know Whoop Master did at one point, but rip. I want to post a thread on the board. I can't remember myself exactly where you get those. I just know they do exist. But that's the cleanest way to get, like, cleaning up your audio from Pony Chops. Have that 5.1 center channel, which is basically cleaned up for you. Then you don't have to try and, like, do weird processing to get the music out or anything. Aside from that, like, if there's too many sound effects, it's kind of... You're kind of out of luck. I think there are some AI programs that might be able to do that I vaguely remember seeing, but I'd have to do more research. But it's you're kind of just generally like just stuck to the 5.1 surround channel, and it's pretty clean. Like a lot of times you don't have a lot of background noise going on, and you don't really have to do anything yourself. So that's like easy mode clean Pony Chop vocals. Oh, Woo Master, he's a guy who used to post on the board. Doesn't go there anymore. Now he's like, lets politics take over his life, and that's like everything. I'm not going to get into that, so, but we're not here to like talk about past people on the board. We're here to talk about music. Yeah, I'll ask around and see if any of the guys I know remember what site have all those pony sample extractions. Oh yeah, duh. Pony Preservation Project. Yes, look to them. They should have like all of that because they have to have it. They have to use that center channel for like clean vocal audio. Wow, Rat, you're late. You missed the entire thing. Any other questions you guys have? Or if I answer the pony vocal chop thing well enough, kind of went on a tangent there. Remember, Lyra's cutie mark is a liar, so music is objectively better than art. Sorry, Rat. Yeah, if you can just... Yeah, if you can get it from the Pony Preservation Project, that's easy mode. Otherwise, if you do get the full thing from some other place, you're going to have to cut out the vocal stuff you want from the episode yourself. Stealing peepees. Yeah, a lot of them are on tempo. Whoops. Well, there will be more streams, so... First one always a little rough. How to make parody mare songs. Oh, what exactly do you mean by parody mare songs? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good one. So starting with a song. Generally what a lot of people do is they will sit down and either if they have a keyboard, like they'll just dick around on the keyboard until something sounds good. Knowing music theory is going to help with that, which is another thing that can be another stream, is like teaching the music theory side of things, because you can't just like hit the keyboard or just go into here and like plop down notes until something sounds good. But if you know exactly like what you're doing, it can be a lot easier to figure out a good like melody to start with, which is usually a good base to start with the song. Like for this one, it's like, okay, so here's a melody. So you can take this and like, okay, then you can add like a kick to it, the snares, the hats, duplicate it over and over again, add a bass, change up the melody for like the chorus or verse of a song, or like the drop, add like a big type of thing. So generally when starting out with music, it's at least getting the main melody or getting like a drum beat going and then building melody on top of that. So it's essentially just starting at a core idea for a song and then building around it and then expanding with on that and then adding things, changing things, kind of knowing how the structure of a song works and going off on through that. That is another thing I can do. I'd have to use a different DAW to do this, like actual Pro Tools to do this quickly, but like I can do in one where I sit down and like make a song from scratch and just see how I go about doing it. But yeah, generally you just start with like an idea, be a melody or a drum beat or like a bass line, and then expanding off that. It's also going to take practice, because part of that is knowing what's going to sound good with what, and like what instruments work well with what other instruments and what part of a song, and being able to listen internally what something's supposed to sound like, and then translating that from your head into a DAW, which takes practice, but that's generally how it goes about. I can also do another stream where it's like, here's how you like start a song from scratch and like do all this type of stuff. Actually, I could do multiple song making streams with like different people that I can bring on and like potentially do like collaborative stuff for different genres. Unfortunately, I don't know how to make pirate shanty music. Like doing what Daniel Ingram does, where like just knowing how to make a genre and make that genre sound good for like composing film and score that's a skill all on its own that like I'm not particularly great at, but some people are really good at doing. Their work songs. Like shanty music being work songs? Well, the best musicians never study theory. Okay. No. But if you're really good at it, then like you could just naturally do it. But I would always recommend theory. But theory is just a tool, is what it is. Like at the end of the day, what sounds good is good. But theory is just really nice to have for like getting going where you need to go. Because oh, there goes my power supply. Because like if you kind of songs, even like in most songs that we listen to in like kind of modern like culture, kind of follows the Western standard of things. So if you know how that works, you can kind of better like predict or compose what you're trying to hear in your head out on paper. And then also once you know the rules, it's like, oh, I know what I'm going to do when I break them. So it's just a tool, basically. What sort of planning do you need for a song? Oh man, what planning do you need for a song? Like, that's a good question. I guess it kind of depends on what song you want to make. Like, if it's acoustic based stuff, then you're gonna want to have a system to record like the drums or the guitar or the voice and have that area set up with those microphones. Stop it. And if it's like electronic purely, then the planning is going to be like, okay, you know, what plugins do I need to do this? To like start the song off. So it kind of just depends on the genre of what you want to do. But in terms of composition, again, it's basically just like it will depend on your composition style. There's no one right way to do this, but it's just getting like a melody or a drum beat or a bass line, and then knowing generally what kind of genre you want to use. Like if you like, you know, you want a lot of synths, or if you want to like simple strip down, like just like a bass and some drums and a vocal or something, and then kind of having that idea in your head and then looking at what tools you'll need for that and then getting those versus having everything and trying to sort through all that. Reference songs are also good. Like if there's something you want to kind of emulate, or there's a song that has a certain production style, it's good to have that on standby. Like put it in your DAW to like listen to that for inspiration. Like I know Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, when he was doing his Downward Spiral album, I think he listened to David Bowie like most of that album production for inspiration. So like even like top named rockstar professionals will like have like albums on the side that they'll listen to while they make music to like get inspiration or things they need for their own stuff. So don't be afraid to like listen to other things while you do it to like get ideas. Yeah, for shanty stuff, like figure out what instruments are used for that music, and like what scales are used, like major, minor, other stuff like that. Figure out the structure of the song for how those are put together, because I don't know, they probably don't use like verse chorus stuff like modern music does. So you kind of have to listen to it, figure it out. I never made shanty music. I can listen to it and try, but maybe if I can find someone else who's like specific in that area, they do like a video on like shanty / like traditional music per se. Acapella stuff that's fun to do. I can't sing, but like if you can, layering up voices like crazy, like that's always fun. Yeah, it's basically like you said, kind of knowing what the song needs and listening to it and being able to pick out the parts. Let's see. Yeah, it's kind of like using references for art, basically, just using different songs. And then samples is like photo bashing. I've been looking at C. Dorian shanties. Yeah, basically, that's another thing you do. Like, compose in C. Dorian, different modes. Again, I don't have anything on the top of my head for that, but if you do, then basically use that as reference. What DAW do you think SGAP uses? I have no idea. It can be hard to tell what DAW someone uses for like the end product. It's more just kind of like maybe genre you can tell, but it's one of the things you just have to ask, basically. I can't really predict that. Oh, you could definitely do that, like Queen style songs with the TalkNet Pony Reservation voices. That's something I've actually done myself, is look into using those like for vocal melody stuff. There's a lot to different music things, so I haven't tried it all. It's still things even I can learn about a lot of. What is this? Oh, I can kind of hear what that shanty thing you're talking about. Yeah, that sounds like just knowing the scale that you really need and kind of like the general melodies that they use. Because a lot of like music in that kind of genre is like kind of copied. Kind of like the blues where it's like there's a lot of variety in blues, but at the heart of it, blues is like the blues scale with certain instruments doing certain things. So you can kind of copy. There's a good amount of things you can copy from other musicians, but you tweak it enough that it's your own. It's like everything's just a remix at the end of the day, so you're pretty surprised how much you can get away with, like borrowing from other people, but then rewriting it a little differently so it sounds different in just the right way, so people aren't like, "Oh, you're just copying," which is kind of a skill on all of its own, which is what like ghostwriters for like pop musicians are professionals at. Musicians are pirates. A lot of stuff is just kind of reused in music. If you can pick it up, and once you study it, it's like, huh, a lot of the same scales, same melodies, same drum beats, but they tweak it in just a different enough way that people are like, huh, that's different. So once that's again what music theory is helpful for, is you can kind of pick out and figure out what gets used over and over again. And then once you see the light of what's happening, you can either copy it yourself or break the rules in certain parts to get it something different. Yep. Yeah, people like that just like back in the day when they didn't have all this, it's just they just listen to the song over and over and over and over again, or like play the guitar over and over and over again until they got the notes right, and then it was just so ingrained in their mind they just knew what to do. Or they're geniuses, but the non-genius ones, they just autism themselves over music until their brain just recognized the patterns, and then they just instinctively knew how to do those patterns themselves. How are you able to make beats that are fire, like the young people say? So beats are essentially just like a melody and then the beat. Like, I can bring the guy I room with who's on the board as well. He does art and DF. Like, he's a lot more competent with making beats, which I never really did. So I can get him on and we can like do a collaborative music making thing for like how to make beats. Because once you figure it out, you can kind of make a beat out of anything. Because it's really just a melody and then having that drum pattern that fits the beat genre that you want, be it like trap or drill or whatever it is. Yeah, I couldn't record back then, so you had to get good. Like, I know some jazz musicians, like, I remember a story back in school, they were talking about how, like, people who used to record, one guy who had a band was like, because they recorded on analog tape, not digital, there was no punch-in and overdub is easy. So if you messed up, you had to redo the whole song. So, like, he would charge them money. Like, if you mess up, I'm charging, like, you're paying me money if you mess up this take. Because we're wasting time in the studio to do this. So it really was, like, even early recording or not recording, it's like, you just had to get good. There are no crutches on this. Either you were good at it or you sucked. So get good is a good piece of advice. How much time would you recommend for an instrumental practice? I'm trying to do 2 instruments. What 2 instruments are you doing? At the end of the day, it's like the more time you spend into it, the better you're gonna get. Like, it's the same with art. It's like the more time you spend and the harder you push yourself with learning more advanced like pieces, the better you're gonna do. So you want to make sure you don't play the same thing over and over and over again. You're not gonna get any better. That's like drawing the same mare in the same pose with the same style, like continuously with the same coloring. Like, you'll get really good at doing that one thing, but you're not going to be a very good artist otherwise. So, like, with instrumental practice, you know, you really want to get good quick, like a couple hours a day, if not more. Starting slow, deliberate practice, doing it right. You don't want to, like, play, like, where's my guitar? Oh, this thing's not tuned properly. I forgot someone else tuned it. Well, we're gonna see what tuning this is then. It's like, if you're trying to learn, like, and if that's like the first thing you're learning, you don't want to like try and do it too quick but badly, like, because if you're doing it bad over and over again really quickly, you're gonna learn how to play it bad over and over again really quickly. So it's just like, just hours of practice, slow but perfect, as slow as you need to go. If it has to be this slow, that's how slow it has to be. Perfect, deliberate, exactly what it needs to be. And then eventually, you go faster and faster. And then the muscle memory takes over. And then you've got good. And you get good. Let's see. Yeah, autism brute force, basically. I don't know the difference between a shanty and a sea song, TBH. You need a pirate specialist. Oh, Purple Phone answered. Rhythmic. I tried to understand beats once by taking a MIDI playback of a casual composer and dropping the notes in the drum tracks instead of pitch changes and instrument change. That's an interesting way of doing it. I never tried that myself. But sometimes it is good to do, like... Sometimes my best ideas are ones where there's just accidental things or weird stuff that you're doing. That's just like, oh, this doesn't make any sense, but let's see what happens when I do this. And then all of a sudden it's like, your world opens up like... Oh, that's something weird. I never heard that before. That was a mistake, but oh, that sounds good with a certain context. So sometimes just play around with stuff. Even if you think it's going to be bad, just experiment. See what happens. Everyone wants to be a pirate mare. Stealing booty. Stealing ponut. I got about 10 more minutes before I need to head out for work here, so. If anyone has any last minute questions, or like a vote on like what stream you want to have next for me to like prepare for. Oh, just anyone, you or anyone else, like, what stream would they want next for, like, music? Because I kind of went over the basics of, like, what a DAW is and basic audio editing, putting MIDI into it, but I didn't really go in depth into any of it. Or, like, microphone work or anything like that. Yeah, I'll take a look at the threads more too and scroll through them a little bit closer instead of skimming over stuff as much as I do. See what people are asking. Yeah, I feel that. Well, I'll just probably just start going in depth. You know what? I might do the microphone one next, and like recording instruments and what mics to use and the environment to record in and things to consider when recording, and like recording drums and all that stuff. Getting good vocal recordings. The generic guitar and piano is what I'm doing. How do you make an instrumental song relate to pony? That is a hotly debated topic. What makes a pony song pony? That's going to vary from person to person. Some people say if the song was inspired by pony, it's pony music. Some will say if it doesn't have a melody from the show or samples, it's not pony music. Some say you need like the actual voices from the show in there, or else it's not really pony music, it's just your own creation. So it could be just like, oh, this was inspired by pony, which you're gonna get a lot of hot takes from. You're gonna get a lot of angry Anons. But like, if you really wanted to be like quote unquote safe pony music stuff, that is for sure. Like, you can do vocal splicing or take a melody from the show and add that in there. That's like distinctly like, okay, yes, like you can like pick out that melody. It's not like too far in the background that it gets lost from what it originally was. So ultimately what makes pony music is a little up to interpretation. I think as long as it's not like you made like a FNAF remix and it's like, oh, this was inspired by pony. Like, as long as you're not doing that, you can kind of generally do whatever, but most people say just have something from the show or the songs in there. If you want to make an instrumental relate to pony. You could even do like compose on instruments that a certain horse would use in the show. Like, you can use a lyre for like lyre music, and you could say that's pony music because you're like composing for lyre on the lyre. Or lyrics, yeah, too. You can have lyrics as well about the show. So a number of things. Oh, yeah, instrumental lyrics, that's right. Just get good. Oh, there's an actual article on the difference. We pirate autism. I'm gonna have to study up the difference between those. Or find someone that really knows like how to compose sea song versus shanty music. Or you become the autism yourself and you just study it over and over and over again until you can pick out exactly what makes it what. The old-fashioned way. Ah, okay. Shanties are the work song. Yeah, or if they get drunk enough. Have enough ale. Autism pirates. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it since gotta get going for work here. No, that's fine. That's why I had extra time for this, so. Okay. Well then, good evening, Anons, and good night. I will be back for more music tutorials later. Yar. Har.